Section 14 of Abe and Mawruss. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Abe and Mawruss, Being Further Adventures of Potash and Perlmutter, by Montague Glass. Chapter 10. Aux Italiens. "What are you talking nonsense, Abe?" Morris Perlmutter declared hotly one morning in December. "An elegant class of people lives in those houses. On the same floor with me lives Harry Baskoff, which he's just married a daughter of Meiser and Finkman. You remember Max Finkman, for years a salesman for B. Senft and Company. Downstairs is a lawyer, a young fella by the name Scholey, and on the ground floor is Dr. Eichendorfer." "With lawyers, Morris," Abe said, "we got enough to do downtown, ain't it? Doctors also, Morris. I'm once living next door to a doctor, and every time I meet the fella, he says, 'How do you do?' like he would mean it's a fine day for an operation. I get a pain in my right side whenever I think of him, even." "Never mind, Abe," Morris rejoined. "Once in a while a doctor in the house comes in pretty handy. A lawyer, too. A fella could get a whole lot of pointers riding up and down in an elevator with a lawyer, ain't it? The only trouble about the house is the family above us, which the lady's all the time hollering like somebody would be giving her a licking already. Minnie says that she hears from our girl that her girl says she was an opera singer in the old country." "Yeah, an opera singer in the old country," Abe exclaimed skeptically. "In Russland they don't got so many opera singers as all that." "What do you mean in Russland?" Morris demanded. "The woman ain't from Russland at all. She's an Italianer. I'm coming up in the elevator last night with her husband and a friend, and the way they're talking to each other, it sounds like a couple of bushelers in a factory. I tell you the honest truth, Abe, for me, don't make no difference if a fellow would be a Frencher or an Irishman. So long as he treats me white, I'd be a good fella, Abe. But an Italiener, Abe, something else again. An Italiener would as lief stick a knife into you as look at you, Abe. And they smell the whole house out with garlic yet." "There's a lot of things smells worse as garlic, Morris," Abe retorted. "As for sticking a knife into you, that's all schmooze. There's lots of people worse as Italianers, I bet you. When it comes right down to it, Morris, I'd a whole lot sooner have a couple Italianers working for me, some of them fellows which they're coming over from Russland." "Since when do you get such friendly feelings for Italianers, Abe?" Morris inquired satirically. "Never mind," Abe exclaimed. "You can knock an Italian all you want, Morris, but you can take it from me, Morris. When Italian has got work to do, you don't stand around talking a lot of nonsense instead of attending to business, like some people I know." With this scathing rejoinder, Abe trudged off toward the cutting room, and Morris proceeded to the office. He had hardly seated himself comfortably at his desk, however, when Abe burst into the room. "That's the way it goes, Morris," he cried. "Half the time we sit and schmooze in the showroom, don't even know what's going on in our own cutting room at all." "What's the matter now?" Morris asked. "Harkavys quit us again," Abe replied. "Quit us?" Morris exclaimed. "What for?" "Nothing. All I says to the fellow is, 'Why them piece goods is on the floor?' And he says he's sick and tired I should get another designer." Morris bit the end off a new cigar and glared ferociously at Abe. "So," he said bitterly, "we lose another designer through you, Abe. What do you think? A designer would stand for abuse the same like a partner, Abe?" "What do you mean abuse, Morris?" Abe protested. "I ain't said no abuse to the feller at all. And even if I would, Morris, I guess I could talk like how I want to in my own cutting room, Morris." Morris rose to his feet. "Schon good, Abe," he said. "Don't ask me I should step into Harkavy's shoes and work like a dog till you're finding a new designer, Abe. Them days is past, Abe." "You shouldn't worry yourself, Morris," Abe retorted. "The way business is so rotten nowadays, you understand, we'd quick get another designer." "Would you?" Morris cried. "Well, I guess I got something to say about that, Abe. If you think we're going to work to hire a designer which is getting fired by every John, Dick, and Harry, you got another thing coming. This time, Abe, I would hire the designer, and don't you forget it." "Did I say I wanted to do it, Morris?" Abe asked. "Go ahead and hire him, Morris. Only one thing I got to ask you as a favor. Don't say the fellow was my choice, Morris, 'cause I wipe my hands from the whole matter." For the remainder of the day, Morris and Abe maintained only such speaking relations as were necessary to the conduct of their business, and when Morris went home that evening he wore so gloomy an air that Harry Bascoff, who rode up on the elevator with him, was moved to comment. "What's the matter, Morris?" he said. "You look like your best customer will be asking an extension on you." "We don't sell such people at all, Harry," Morris said bitterly. "Collections is all right, Harry, but when a fellow's got a partner such quick temper, understand me, that he fires out the help faster as I can hire him, I got a right to look worried. Our designer leaves us today." "Ain't that terrible, Morris?" Harry said in mock sympathy. "I suppose you couldn't walk for miles on Fifth Avenue between 18th and 23rd Street and break your neck falling over 100 designers which they're hanging around there looking for jobs." They alighted at the third floor, and Morris drew his latchkey from his waistcoat pocket. "Sure, I know, Harry," he retorted. "Them people, which they already got designers, could always find a better one, you understand? But when you ain't got a designer, Harry, that's something else again. You could advertise until you're blue in the face, and all the answers you get is from fellas which they couldn't design a sausage casing for a Frankfurter already." "Schmooze, Morris!" Harry cried. "I can get you thousands of designers. In fact, Morris, only this afternoon my father-in-law, Mr. Finkman, sends me over a man which he's working for years by Senft & Company as a designer. I should give him a job. I already got a good designer, so what could I do?" "Why didn't you think to send him over to me, Harry?" "How should I know you wanted a designer?" Harry rejoined. "But anyhow, maybe it ain't too late yet. After supper, I'd ring up Mr. Finkman, and I'll let you know." "Much obliged," Morris said, as he turned the key and entered his own apartment. He was so far restored to good humor by his conversation with Harry Bascoff that when he bestowed his evening kiss on Minnie, he failed to notice that her eyes were somewhat swollen. "Yes, Minnie," he said, "that's the way it is when you got good neighbors." "Good neighbors," Minnie said bitterly. And then, for the first time, Morris observed her swollen eyelids. "Why, Minnie Laban!" he exclaimed as he folded her in a second embrace. "What's the trouble?" "Don't, Morris," Minnie said almost snappishly as she wriggled away from him. "My waist is mussed up from working in the kitchen without your crushing it." "Working in the kitchen?" Morris said. "What's the matter? Is Tilly sick?" "No, she isn't," Minnie replied, as she rushed off toward the kitchen. "She's gone." Morris hung up his coat and made his perfunctory toilet without another word. Despite Minnie's pathetic appearance, there was a dangerous gleam in her eyes that urged Morris to the exercise of the most delicate marital diplomacy. "What a soup!" he exclaimed, as he subjected the first spoonful to a long, gurgling inhalation. "If they got such a soup as this at Waldorf, Minnie Laban, I bet you they would soak you at least $1 for it." Following the soup came boiled brisket, a dish that Morris loathed. Ordinarily, Morris would have eaten it with sulky diffidence. But when Minnie bore the steaming dish from the kitchen, he not only jumped from his seat to take it from her hands, but after he had deposited it on the table, he kissed her on the forehead with lover-like delicacy. "How did you know I'm thinking all the way up on the subway if Minnie would only get me bushstickle for supper? For a change, what a treat it would be," he said. Minnie's glum face broke into a smile, and Morris fairly beamed. "What do you bother your head so about a girl leaves you, Minnie Laban?" he cried. "You could get plenty of girls. On Lenox Avenue, a fella could break his neck already, falling over girls which is hanging around looking for jobs." "Oh, I know you can get lots of girls," Minnie agreed. "But you've got to train them, Morris. But then, too, I wouldn't care so much. But those awful Italiens upstairs went and stole Tilly away from me." "What?" Morris shouted. "Them Italian has done it? Well, what do you think of that for a dirty trick?" "And they only pay her $3 a month more," Minnie continued. $3 a month more? Hey, Morris replied. Well, that's the way it is, Minnie. Honestly, Minnie, anybody which they would steal away from you, somebody who's working for you, it ain't safe to live in the same house with them at all. A fellow which steals away fellas' help will pick a pocket. Such cutthroats you couldn't trust at all. He helped himself to some more brisket. Never mind, Minnie, he said. It would be necessary. We'll pay a girl a couple of dollars more a week so long as we get a good one. Will we? Minnie said. Since when are you running this house, Morris? I was only talking in a manner of speaking, he hastened to say. Where do you buy such good bush deckle, Minnie? Honestly, it takes in a way a genius to pick out such meat. Does it? Minnie rejoined. I ordered it over the phone. And furthermore, Morris, if you make so much noise eating, you'll wake the boy. I'm all through, Minnie, Morris said. Wait, I'll show you how I could help you wash the dishes. As he started for the kitchen, with one butter plate in his hand, the doorbell rang, whereupon he returned the butter plate to the dining room table and hastened down the hall. Hello, Morris, cried Harry Baskoff, as Morris opened the door. I rung up the old man, and he says he got the feller a job with Samet Brothers. Come inside, Morris answered, and led the way to the parlor. He motioned his visitor to a seat and produced a box of cigars. Do you mean to say the fellow got a job as quick as all that? He sure did, Morris, Harry replied. He's an elegant designer, Morris, and if B. Senft knows his business, he never would got rid of him at all. Why, what had he done to B. Senft? Morris asked. Nothing at all, Morris. Senft is crazy. He gets a prejudice against the fellow all of a sudden on account he's an Italiener. Italiener? Morris cried. Sure, Harry replied. Did you ever hear the like, Morris? That a man like Senft, which his folks so come over in the Mayflower neither, you understand, should kick on account a fellow's an Italiener? And mind you, Morris, the feller is otherwise perfectly decent, respectable fellow by the name Enrico Simonetti. Morris nodded. With a name like that, he must gotta be a good designer, he commented. Otherwise, Samet Brothers wouldn't have hired him at all. Take a whole lot more gumption than Leon Samet got it to call such a fellow from the cutting room even. It's all right, Morris. You don't have to call such a fellow from the cutting room. He could run a cutting room as well as design garments. And in fact, Morris, when Samet Brothers pay the fellow $2,000 a year, you understand they're practically getting him for nothing. $2,000 a year? Morris exclaimed. Why, we ourselves will pay him $2,500. The fellow's worth $4,000 if he's worth a cent, Morris. But the way business is so rotten nowadays, he was willing to take $2,000. But my father-in-law, Mr. Finkman, told me on the phone the roar this feller puts up and Leon Samet offers him $1,800. Leon was pretty near afraid for his life already. I don't blame him, Morris commented. Such highwaymen like Samet Brothers, they beat a fellow's price down to nothing. We ain't that way with our help, Harry. If we got a good man working by us, we... Morris! Cried a voice from the kitchen. Yes, Morris replied, jumping to his feet. In less than 2 minutes he reappeared and approached Harry with an apologetic smile. Would you excuse me a couple of minutes, Harry? He asked. I got to run over to the grocer for a box of soap powder. Our girl threw up her job on us. I'll go with you, Harry replied. I need to get a little air. A minute later they walked down the street to Lenox Avenue. And as they approached the corner, Harry nodded to a short, dark personage who was proceeding slowly down the street. "Hello!" he cried, seizing Harry's arm. "How'd you do?" "Fine, thanks," Harry said. "Let me introduce you to a friend of mine by the name Mr. Perlmutter. This is Mr. Simonetti, Morris, which I'm talking to you about." Morris shook hands limply. "You don't tell me," he said. "You know me, Mr. Simmons? My partner is Mr. Potash. I guess you hear B. Senft speak about us." "Sure," Simonetti said. "And Mr. Senft, he's always to say, Mr. Potash and Perlmutter, he's a nicer people, sure." "Better than Samet Brothers?" Harry asked. Simonetti raised his eyebrows and made a flapping gesture with his right hand. "Oh," he said, "Samet Brothers, that's all right, too. Not too much all right, Mr. Baskoff, but he's pretty good people. I am now just to go see as a lawyer for the contract." "Ain't you signed the contract yet?" Morris cried. "Not yet," Simonetti answered. "Just now. I'm a-going." "Baskoff," Morris urged, "supposing you and me goes together with Mr. Simonetti to the Harlem Winter Garden and talks things over?" Simonetti looked amazedly at Baskoff. "Sure," Baskoff said. "It ain't too late if he ain't signed the contract." "What do you mean?" Simonetti asked. "Why, I mean this, Simonetti," Baskoff replied. "Sammet Brothers will give you a contract for $2,000, and Perlmutter here is willing to pay you $2,500. Ain't that right, Morris?" Morris nodded. "With privilege to renew it, Morris, ain't it?" Again Morris nodded. "1-year renewal," he said. Simonetti looked earnestly at Morris, who fumbled in his waistcoat pocket and produced a cigar. "Do you smoke, Mr. Simmons?" he began. "Simonetti," the designer interrupted, as he took the cigar and bit off the end. "And if it's too much to say, Simonetti, call me Enery." When Morris entered his place of business the following morning, he appeared to be in no better humor than when he left for home the previous evening. "Well, Abe," he announced, "I hired a soap powder." Abe stared at him for a moment. "What are you talking nonsense? You hired a soap powder?" he exclaimed. "Are you verrückt?" Morris snapped his fingers. "A soap powder!" he cried. "Hear me talk. I mean a designer. I hired a designer, Abe. First-class fella." "What do you mean you hired a first-class fella?" Abe demanded. "You leaving here last night, 6:30, and here it is only 8 o'clock next morning, and already you hired a designer which he's a first-class fella. How do you know he's a first-class fella, Morris? Did you dream it?" "No, I didn't dream it, Abe," Morris said as he hung up his hat. "And what is more, I want to tell you something. Yesterday you saying I should go ahead and hire a designer and not bother you and your head, and today you're kicking it yet. Well, you can kick all you want, Abe. Because a fellow's partner kicks, or his wife kicks, Abe, he must got to stand for it. But just the same, Abe, this here fella comes to work for us Monday morning. We got him a contract, all signed and gefixed by a lawyer, which he gets from us $2,500 a year for 1 year, with privileges to renew for another year." $2,500? Abe exclaimed. "By a lawyer? What are you talking about, Morris?" At this juncture Morris grew purple with rage. "Say, looky here, Abe," he yelled. "Ask me no questions. I'm sick and tired of it. You would think if a fellow forgets to buy a packet soap powder, you understand, his wife wouldn't go crazy and ring up the police station yet on account of going with Baskoff, and this here cutter to see a lawyer by the name of Sholey, which he lives in my flat house yet. There was sitting till 12 o'clock fixing up the contract, and if you don't like it, you can lump it. When I come home, I got a Dr. Eichendorff, he attend to Minnie. $5 that robber soaks me for, and he lives in the same house with me. Also, this lawyer, Sholey, charges me about $25 for drawing the contract, understand me, which Feldman himself would only charge us $50. Neighbors, them fellas is, Abe, such neighbors. I would expect the guy that I'm living next door to Sing Sing prison." For more than an hour, Abe pressed the matter no further, but at length curiosity impelled him to speak. "Say, looky here, Morris," he began. "Couldn't I look at that contract, too?" "Sure you could," Morris replied. "I'm surprised you ain't got no more interest in the matter. You didn't ask me before." Abe grunted and took the contract that Morris handed to him. "This agreement," it ran, "made and entered into between Abraham Potash and Morris Perlmutter, composing the firm of Potash and Perlmutter, on the borough of Manhattan, city of New York, parties of the first part, and Enrico Simonetti of the same place, party of the second part, witnesseth." At this point Abe dropped the contract. "Morris," he said slowly, "do you mean to tell me you're hiring for a designer an Italiener?" "Sure," Morris replied. "Why not?" "Why not?" Abe bellowed. "Why not? Ain't you and me married men? Ain't we got wives? Ain't you got a child to support as well?" "What's that got to do with it?" Morris asked. "What's that got to do with it?" Abe repeated. "I'm surprised to hear you should talk that way, Morris. Supposing it's necessary we should tell a fella he's coming down late, or that he's doing something which he shouldn't do, you understand? Then the very first thing you know he sticks into us a knife and fertig." I suppose, Morris, you're figuring that even if you don't carry such good insurance, Morris, your wife is young, could easy get married again. But with me, it's differently. My wife ain't so young no longer. Say, looky here, Abe, Morris interrupted. Don't talk no more such nonsense to me. 'Cause I seen the fella, and I'm sitting with him last night over 3 hours. That fella would no more stick a knife into you as I would. No, Abe commented. And furthermore, Abe, when you're saying that Italians stick knives, understand me, you're talking like a greenhorn. Italians is decent, respectable people like anybody else, Abe. Just because you're going on to the opera, a couple of Italians stab themselves like I'm seeing it last week. A show by the name of Pagliacci, you understand? There ain't no sign Italians is a stabber. Understand me? For that matter, Abe, after this here show, Pagliacci comes over a whole lot of fellows from Russland onto the stage, which they're dancing so quick I never seen the like. Understand me? And you know as well as I do, Abe, you got plenty fellows from Russland working by us here, which they could no more dance as they could fly. Abe shrugged again. Never mind. Supposing they wouldn't be stabbers even, Morris, he continued. If you got working for you an Italiana which you just broke in good, you understand? So soon as he saves a couple of $100, he right away quits, and he goes back to the old country. All them fellas is eating his garlic and lotching mid-holes into it, and you know as well as I do, Morris, for $200 a fella could buy enough lotching and klobber to last him for the rest of his natural life. Whereas, Morris, you take a fellow which he's coming over here from Russland, you understand? And he wouldn't go back to the old country not if you was to make him a present of it for free to nothing. Is it anything against them Italianers if they save their money, Abe? Morris asked. All right, Morris, Abe said. Supposing Italianers is such big savers. Understand me. One thing you must anyhow got to admit, Morris. You get a couple of Italians working for you, understand me, and from morning till night they're never giving you a minute's peace. Seemingly they must gotta sing. They couldn't help themselves, Morris. What do we care if he hollers a little something once in a while, Abe? Morris protested. You could stand it if he turns out some good styles. If he turns out good styles, it's all right, Morris, Abe said as he turned away. Lots of accidents could happen to a fella in the garment business, Morris. Burglars could bust into his loft and steal the silk piece goods on him. He could maybe have a fire. He could fall down the elevator shaft and break Gotzelhutten, his neck. All these things would come to a garment manufacturer, Morris. But that his designer should turn on some good styles is an accident, which don't happen to one garment manufacturer out of 100, Morris. Nevertheless, long before Enrico Simonetti's term of employment had expired, Abe was obliged to acknowledge his mistake. Not only had Enrico proved his efficiency and originality as a designer, but he had exercised the utmost discretion in the management of the cutting room. Moreover, he had little taste for music, and never so much as whistled a melody during working hours. I couldn't make him out at all, Morris, Abe declared one morning. Actually, the fellow complains to me this morning he couldn't stand the little greenhorn we hired last week on account he smells so from garlic. Sure, I know, Morris replied. And you don't smoke and you don't shika, and he tells me yesterday he boards with a family on 2nd Avenue, which all cost him is $4 a week, and yet you, Abe, you're kicking because the fellow's an Italiana. When was I kicking to tell you the fellow's an Italiana? Abe demanded. Why, you yourself, Morris, always says to me Italians is no good. If you're telling me once it, you're telling me 100 times about an Italian family which they're living on top of you, Morris, and to hear you talk, such rashoyim, you wouldn't believe existed at all. Sure, I know, Morris admitted, but there's Italians and Italians, Abe, and only last night them people sits up till 2 o'clock in the morning, shickering and hollering. Not only the woman hollering, Abe, but a fella singing that big song from Pagliacci till I thought my head would bust. Someone should write to the Board of Health about it, Abe. Might, sirs, Abe exclaimed. If you got living in the same house with you a lawyer and a doctor, Morris, you shouldn't got so much trouble with the Board of Health after them Italians. And anyhow, Morris, if the worst comes to the worst, you understand there's one thing you could always do. What's that? Morris asked. Move out, Abe replied as he started for the cutting room. Yes, Morris, he commented when he returned 5 minutes later. You can knock the Italians all you want, but you got to admit, they ain't throwing their money into the street. Henry's showing me just now a bank book, which in the last 9 months he's putting away $1,800. That's all right, Abe, Morris said. If he would be from unser Leute, you understand, instead of he's putting the money in savings bank and getting 3% interest, he would invest it in something else and make it a pretty near double itself soon. What do you mean 3% interest? Abe retorted. Henry's got his money in a bank, which they're paying him 5%, compounded every 3 months. Henry ain't no fool, Morris. 5%? Morris exclaimed. What for a bank would pay 5% interest, Abe? I don't know what for a bank pays 5% interest, Morris, Abe replied. But you can take it from me, Morris. The way Sam Fetter discounts perfectly good A1 accounts for them depositors of his when they are a little short, Morris. Not only could the Kosciuszko Bank afford to pay 5%, Morris, but they could also give 6 or 7, and still, Sam Fetter's wife wouldn't got to pawn none of her diamonds. Does he deposit his money with Feder? Morris asked. Yeah, he deposited his money with Feder, Morris, Abe replied. He deposits his money with a banker by the name Giuseppe Scratch Only. Giuseppe Scratch Only? Morris repeated. That's a fine name for a banker, Abe. Giuseppe, that's Italian for Joseph, Morris, Abe explained. And Scratch Only, it's Italian name for the name of a fellow in Rusland would be called Lipschutzky. For that matter, Morris, Lipschutzky ain't much of a name for a banker neither. No, Morris admitted, but I'd a whole lot sooner trust my money to a fellow by the name of Lipschutzky or to Feder as to one of the scratchy names, Abe. What's the difference what the banker's name is? Abe rejoined. Henry says the money's all sent by his bank to a branch they got it in the old country. Got advice, but that bank couldn't get for its money in the old country because you know as well as I do, Morris. Here in New York City, some businessmen is short it once in a while, understand me? But over in the old country, everybody is short all the time. The way banks does business over there, Morris, they make Feder's Bank look like a free loan association. Sure, I know, Abe, Morris said gloomily. And you mark my words, Abe, so soon as Henry's year is up, he will follow his money to the old country. You shouldn't worry yourself about that, Morris, Abe said confidently. When a fellow's got a contact with a privilege for renewal of $200 raised like Henry got it, understand me? He ain't so stuck on going back to the old country. $200 is a whole lot of money over there, Morris. For $200 in the old country, Don't tell me again how much lockshin it holes in it a fella could buy in the old country, Abe, Morris interrupted. There's elegant weather over there, and good wine to drink, and places to go and look at which they got mountains twice as high as the Catskills with olives and grapes growing on 'em. I was never crazy about olives, Morris. Me neither, Morris agreed. But Henry is something else again. And the way that fellow's talking to me in the cutting room yesterday, Abe, either he wouldn't be working for us 3 months from today or the steamer stops running to Italy. Morris, Abe shouted, at 10 o'clock one morning in early March. Where was you? Where was I? Morris repeated. I was to the court, that's where I was. To the court? Abe exclaimed. That's what I said, Morris continued. We fixed that sucker, me and Scholey and Dr. Eichendorfer and Baskoff. We got him for a summons for this afternoon, 2 o'clock. He should go to the Jefferson Market Police Court till 4 o'clock this morning. Them people upstairs sits up hollering and skittering. Minnie and me, we couldn't sleep a wink. And Baskoff neither. Steals our servant girl yet. I'll show that Rocher. Abe glared indignantly at his partner. Do you mean to tell me, Morris, he said, that you're fooling away your time going on the court because somebody upstairs sings a little something last night? Sings a little something, Morris cried. Why, that Italian hollers Pagliatsky till you'd think he commits a murder up there. Suppose he did, Morris. Seem you got no business to go down here? Here we are, rushed to death already, and you're fooling away your... Don't say that again, Abe, Morris broke in. I guess I could take off a couple of hours if I want to. Sure, Abe replied ironically. And Henry takes off a couple of hours this lunchtime. He just told me so, Morris. He takes off a couple of hours on account he's going downtown to draw some money out of the bank and buy his ticket. Buy his ticket? Morris gasped. That's right, Abe continued with forced calmness. Because, Morris, they wouldn't let no one travel on a steamer without buying a ticket. People what run steamers is very funny that way, Morris. Morris grew pale as he removed his coat and hat. What's he buying a steamer ticket for? He asked. He didn't tell me exactly, Morris, Abe went on. But I got a sort of idea he's going back to Italy, Morris. And next time, Morris, when we hire a designer, understand me, I do it myself. Also, Morris, I hire a designer which if he goes back to the old country, you understand, they take right away from him a soldier. And then, Morris, you wouldn't got to be left without a designer just in the middle of the busy season. Did you talk to him, Abe? Morris inquired timidly. Maybe we could jolly him into staying? Abe nodded again. Maybe you could jolly a duck not to swim in the water, Morris, Abe cried bitterly. That's all right, Abe, Morris retorted. A duck ain't got no use for a couple of $100 bonus. A couple of $100 bonus? Abe yelled. Do you mean to say you'd offer that Italiener a bonus? Sure. Why not? Ain't he a good designer, Abe? I don't care if he's the best designer in the world, Morris, Abe replied firmly. Before I'd give him a couple of $100 bonus, understand me, he'd go to Italy and a whole lot farther, too. Suit yourself, Morris said, as he commenced to examine the morning's mail. He was midway in the assortment of the firm's sample line when Abe approached him half an hour later. Morris, he said, do me a favor. You speak to the fella and see what you can do. After all, a couple of $100 wouldn't break us. I'm satisfied, Morris replied, and he walked immediately to the cutting room. What's the matter, Henry? I hear you're leaving us, he began. Henry straightened up from the layer of cloth that was spread before him on the cutting table and passed one hand through his bushy black hair. I got a no kick, Mr. Perlmutter, he said. Just till my contract is up, so I go, that's all. I like the job. First class. Mr. Potash, he's very good man. Mr. Perlmutter, he's too. Then why don't you stay with us? Morris asked, and Enrico Simonetti heaved a great sigh. I like the job. First class, Mr. Perlmutter. I got to no kick, he declared. But I can no work. I'm sick. Sick? Morris exclaimed. Well, why don't you tell us then? We'd only be too glad to let you go away for a couple of weeks, Henry. Enrico sighed even more deeply. It's not a sickness for 2 weeks, Mr. Perlmutter, he said. I'm a sick just to see my mother. This old woman, my mother, Mr. Perlmutter. Enrico's large brown eyes grew moist as he proceeded. Yes, I'm a sick, he went on. I'm a sick just for see Ishia, Papsilo, Capri, Mr. Perlmutter. You know I'm a sick for see Aranci. Oranges grow on a tree. I'm a sick just to see my own city, Napoli. Yes, Mr. Perlmutter, I'm very sick. He sat down on a stool and bowed his face in his hands, while his shoulders heaved up and down in the emotion of nostalgia. Think it over, Henry, Morris said huskily, and departed on tiptoe. He returned at once to the assorting of the sample line, nor did he look up when Abe came toward him a few minutes afterward. Well, Morris, Abe said, what did he say? He didn't say nothing, Morris replied. Why not? Didn't he think 200 was enough? I didn't mention the 200 to him at all, Morris answered, because it'd be no use. You couldn't keep that fellow from going back to the old country. If you put him into a jail even, he'd break out. Abe, believe me. Abe nodded slowly. Well, that's the way it goes, Morris, he said bitterly, as Enrico walked toward them from the cutting room. Mr. Potash, he said, excuse me, I give you me a little time for going downtown just the same, like I tell you this morning. Go ahead, Henry, Morris replied. You're not mad at me, Mr. Perlmutter? Enrico asked anxiously. Why should I be mad at you, Henry? Morris rejoined. If I would feel the way you do, Henry, I wouldn't have waited for my contract to be up even. Ain't that a fine way for you to talk, Morris? Abe said after Enrico had gone. You would think you'd be glad to get rid of the fellow, like right in the middle of the busy season. Morris shrugged. I don't care if I got to jump right in and work till 12 o'clock every night, Abe, he declared. I would tell him to go home to the old country, and I would got to pay for the ticket myself. Abe thrust his hands into his trouser pockets and started to walk gloomily away. Furthermore, Abe, if you want to go out for lunch, Abe, Morris concluded, now is the time, because I told you before, Abe, I got to go to court at 2 o'clock. Sure, you told me that before, Morris, Abe growled as he put on his hat and coat. And when a fellow goes to work and deliberately fixes things so he's got to go to a court, Morris, do you know the next place he would go? He paused for a retort, but as Morris made no sign, Abe supplied his own answer. A lunatic asylum, he said, and a minute later the elevator door clanged behind him. For almost an hour longer, Morris busied himself with the assortment of the sample line, and he had about concluded his task when a great wailing noise came from the cutting room. He jumped to his feet and ran hurriedly to the scene of the uproar. There he found Enrico Simonetti seated on a stool, clutching his hair with both hands, while around him stood a group of his assistants, voicing their anguish like a pack of foxhounds. "Cush!" Morris cried. "What's the trouble here?" The wailing ceased, but Enrico remained seated, his hands still clutching his bushy hair, while his large brown eyes stared blankly from a face as white as a Pierrot. "What's the matter?" Morris repeated. "His bank busted on him," said Nathan Shankman, the shipping clerk. "His bank? What bank?" "It ain't a regular bank," Nathan explained. "He's given his money to an Italian which he calls himself a banker, Mr. Perlmutter. And today when he's going there to get him money, the fellow's store is locked. Nobody knows where he went to at all. The clerk's gone." "Is that right, Henry?" Morris asked. Enrico nodded his head without removing his hands from his hair. "There's a big crowd of loafers around the store," Nathan continued, "which they're saying would kill the fellow if they get him. So Henry comes back here on account he ain't that kind, Mr. Perlmutter. Henry's a decent fellow, Mr. Perlmutter." Morris looked pityingly at his cutter, who continued to stare at the floor in stony despair. "Might you could do something to get his money back, maybe, Mr. Perlmutter?" Nathan said. "I would see when my partner comes in from lunch," Morris replied, as he turned to leave the cutting room. Abe's bulky form blocked the doorway. Morris waved him back, and Abe tiptoed to the front of the showroom, followed by Morris. "What's the trouble?" Abe asked immediately. "Trouble enough," Morris declared. "Henry's bank busted on him." "What?" Abe cried, and Morris repeated the information. "Then he wouldn't leave us at all," Abe said, and Morris nodded sadly. "Ain't it terrible?" he commented. "Terrible?" Abe said. "What do you mean, terrible? So terrible that we wouldn't got to lose our designer right in the middle of a busy season." "I don't mean us, Abe," Morris said. "I mean for Henry." "Henry neither," Abe rejoined. "Henry would still got his job of $200 a year raise." "And a bonus of $200, Morris added. "A bonus nothing!" Abe almost shouted. "You mean to told me you'd pay Henry a bonus of $200 now that he must got to stay with us?" "I sure do," Morris declared fiercely. "And furthermore, Abe, if you don't want to pay it, I would pay from my own pocket. I'm going right in to tell him about it now." He walked away to the cutting room, and in less than 5 minutes Abe repented his parsimony. He went on tiptoe to the door of the cutting room, where Morris leaned over Enrico, uttering words of consolation and advice. "Morris," Abe hissed, "make it 300, the bonus." Morris nodded. "And, Morris, it's pretty near 1:45. Ain't you going up there at all?" "I should never walk another step if you didn't say 2 o'clock," Morris Perlmutter protested to Philip Sholey, as they hastened up the stairway in Jefferson Market Police Court. "Never mind what I said," Sholey cried. "It's now anyhow 2:15, and that Dago has got his wife and servant girl and 2 clerks waiting in court since 12 o'clock. Eichendorfer and Baskoff have been here since 1 o'clock. "Say, listen here, Sholey," Morris said as they panted up the last flight. "I came just as soon as I could, and I couldn't come no sooner." "Hats off," the policeman at the door shouted, as Morris walked up the aisle with his attorney, and a moment later they passed into the enclosure for counsel. "My client and his witness have been here since 12 o'clock," a lawyer was explaining while Morris sat down, "and in the meantime his place of business has been closed." At this juncture the client in question caught sight of Morris and ripped out so strong an Italian expletive that the court interpreter nearly swooned. "What business is he in?" the magistrate asked. "He's in the banking business on Mulberry Street," the lawyer continued, "and it's impossible to say what harm all this may do him." "Call the case again," the magistrate said. "Witness in the case of Giuseppe Caraccioli, please step forward," the interpreter announced, and the policeman in the rear of the courtroom repeated the injunction to the loungers in the stairway. "Giuseppe Scraccioli," he bellowed, and Morris heard him from the seat in the enclosure for counsel. He jumped to his feet and made for the gate. "Where are you going?" Sholey demanded, grabbing him by the coat. "Let go my coat!" Morris cried, and the next moment he was taking the stairs, 3 at a jump. Nor had his excitement abated when he burst into the cutting room half an hour later. "Henry," he gasped, "if I would get your money back for you, would you stick out the busy season for us?" Enrico was chalking designs on a piece of pattern paper when Morris entered. Beyond a slight pallor, he appeared to be quite resigned to his loss. But at his employer's words he flushed vividly and clutched again at his hair. "Leave your hair alone and listen to me," Morris commented. Sure," Enrico said tremulously. "I listen, Mr. Perlmutter. Did you hear what I said?" Morris went on. "If I can get your money back for you, will you stay here till the busy season is over?" "Sure," Enrico cried. "Sure. I gotta give a damn how long I stay. You get my money, Mr. Perlmutter. I stay here for 2-3 years." "All right," Morris said. "Put on your coat and go back to Mulberry Street. Your banker will have opened up again by the time you get there." 10 days afterward, Abe and Mawruss sat in the showroom. End of section 14.